What is an herb? Well, I looked it up just to make sure I had the right one. Good old Webster, you know, he's been around a long time. It's my teaching thing. It says any plant with leaves, seeds, or flowers used for flavoring, food, medicine, or perfume. And then there's also in botany, and botany came from the field of herbalism, because herbalism has been around for pretty much as long as we have, you know. And it says in botany, any seed-bearing plant that does not have a woody stem and dies to the ground after flowering versus a shrub or a tree. And this was cute. The largest herb plant is a banana plant. Did not know that until I looked that up today. I love learning something new absolutely every day. Isn't that fun? And that reminds me of when I visited Hawaii with my hubby then, and somebody had a place, and we saw the banana grow from this at night to the next morning up to here. Wow. Yeah, I mean, it's impressive. And then you wonder, well, it's in the middle, surrounded by water, you know, kind of got all the things it takes. So that's what plants need. So I wanted to divide this up for you guys so that you could stand a chance, because when I first started growing things, the thumbs weren't green. And like they remind you here, you know, we have to sometimes do something a few times to kind of get it down. And don't hesitate if you have a problem to come back, I have, and ask them for help, which is why they do these lovely classes. And it works out really well. So the season is talking about whether it's, like I said, annual, you have to plant it every year, although some that isn't true, because we start with the top herb, which is basil. And most basils you think of with pesto and eating, you know, the Italian, the sweet basils. But there's also basils come from other countries. The Asian population, Thai in particular, have a Thai basil that produces a beautiful flower and has a really spicy limb and everything to it. And again, that's particular to their cooking. Each region will pick up something for their own cooking, which works out really well. And then I turned out a few years ago, I got into herbalism. 2009, I went to school. It's no longer there. It was called the Sierra Institute of Herbal Studies, and it was ran by Dodie Hart, who was an herbalist of her entire life and a teacher, a really good one. And she'd studied under people like Susan Weed, what a name for an herbalist, right? Who had the belief that you should, if you really want to learn in-depth knowledge versus superficial knowledge, that you would study one plant the entire cycle. So the school that I went to, I would drive up into the hills starting in January, one weekend a month for the entire year, and we would follow the cycle of it and go through. And it was really what started me moving into the direction of, I had some health problems afterwards, and I began moving more towards closer to plant as what would help me versus, I still do other things, but there's a lot of information you can get from the plant world that way. So I came up with an Ayurvedic one that is called holy basil. Tulsi is the other name for it, the botanical name. And I didn't bring that book, but I have one at home. I always like books to figure out what's going on with my little world here. And in this one, they tell you about the fact that it's an adaptogen. And the adaptogen part simply means that it has all these cute little nutrients running around inside of it. And when you consume it, usually in a tea, it's quite tasty. Everybody I feed it to really likes it. Then your body gets to pick those things up. It helps you adapt to stress and so on and so forth. So theory being, if you're okay and you're going to fall a little bit, if you give yourself something extra, maybe it helps prop you up, which is not a bad thing to do. So basil, it's a lovely plant. The difference between the other basils and my basil is a perennial if I keep it sheltered. So I have mine in raised bins that I can move. That's the other thing you can do if you don't have the sunshine. I used to tell the ladies at the rest homes, you get a little pot, you put it on wheels, you push the little puppy around like you do a shopping cart, you know? That way you can move your things in to where the sun is or out of it. Because another friend, she was really smart about succulents, and she would take umbrellas and put them on her plants, because every now and then we just get a little bit too much sunshine, and so we need to give them a little bit of a break here, and then it happens. So, you know, they have a tolerance that you can work with them if you kind of ask them what they need and move on. The next one, bee balm, is the prettiest thing, and it's a perennial, meaning that it's going to last all the time. And it also likes moist and fertile, so that means you could have one that's staying there all the time as a backdrop, and you can have something in front of it that's going to change. So, you know, remember that your yard and your places you're choosing to do this are your canvas that you're going to select. And my friend, my hubby's friend, he's gone too, gosh, they used to tell me to make little places. because the English, they loved the big formal gardens. You know, everything was giant and everything was geometry and everything was this. But the Asians, which was my community when I came out here, they turned to having little small gardens. You know, a little place you sit here has this, and you move over here and there's another little place here. So you can begin, if you want to move into this, to do that. And I suggest strongly that if you're going to make it your kitchen garden, you're going to eat out of it. And pots work fine for basil, that you have it fairly close so that you can go out and snip it and do something with it. Because it's nice. Most of the plants smell lovely, and sometimes my cat and I, we go for a walk and we, you know, do the little aromatherapy that you sometimes need at night. Borage. Borage is an interesting thing. It's actually invasive. But if you put things that are invasive in things that don't let them be invasive, then again, you can control the movement, because plants move a little different than we, but they have ways of doing it. Borage is interesting, and the reason it can be eaten is because if you sprinkle the little leaves when they're small, they have a lovely flavor and you can put them in your salads. The other thing, if you're deciding to have a little cocktail party, or we don't do cocktails anymore, tea. By the way, we have tea with rosemary over there. We can take a break if you want to go grab a glass. Okay, you have to stop me if I talk too. I haven't done it for a while, and I think I had a cup of coffee this morning, so, you know, the nutrients are flowing through. We're doing okay. All right, the borage happened because I used to live on 20 acres, and I had a big, huge thing. So when I moved to town, I had to figure out in my head how I would take that lovely thing that I liked, my paths and all that, and scale it down. So you can do that with plants, because you can create little nooks and crannies around, and you get a tree, put it in, you know, put something on the side. So borage, what I discovered was that you can use the little flowers in ice cubes and put them when you're having your lemonade for a drink. It also attracts the bees, and you can eat it, and it will self-populate. So put it in an area you can contain. When I was living in the country, I wanted a little bit of bamboo, and they said, oh, you do know what bamboo does, you know, it likes to all over the place. So we found out that if we wanted to have a self-contained little place of bamboo, we put it down inside pipes, irrigation pipes. And that contained it, so it couldn't do the risers that it wanted to do. So it was, in effect, turned into a mule. So some of you laughed. Calendula. My calendulas are coming up today. I noticed them. They like to self-seed themselves. They're absolutely beautiful. So even though they say they're an annual, they self-seed. So the suggestion would be, if you decided you wanted calendula, you would put it into a spot and give it a little bit of room, because when this plant is finished, it dies. So now you're going to be able to wiggle it off when it's gone, because now it's sent out some puppies, some little babies and everything. The beauty about calendula is that you can grind it up and put a little oil on it and heat it up, and then you can doctor your skin with it. I go to health food stores and buy online from various places that make, but I was taught how to make the creams. Yes?
Is that with the flowers or the leaves or the whole plant?
The flowers in particular. The leaves and the whole plant, what they often do with things is they cut them as cut and sifted. But this one, you want to take the fresh flowers and you want to masticate them into the olive oil and let it heat, because then it extracts the phytoelements out of there. And then if you really want a salve instead of an oil, you go get some of those pastilles. They sell them at the craft stores locally and everything, and then you warm them up a little bit and you mix the two and then let it solidify, and then you have yourself a nice little salve. So calendula is a lovely plant. And you'll notice that it talks about it has average moisture, so you don't have to spend a lot of water on it. Now, the one I left out that should have fit between calendula and chives is called chamomile, which I don't know why I left that one out. Do we have a chamomile here?
Not in the bowl, but I'll grab you one.
Okay, I was just thinking I would do a little showing. The difference is there are two chamomiles, and one is German and it's an annual, and it takes well drained, and it's 2 to 3 inches tall, and the other one is Roman. You can Google these guys, or I'll give you my email. You can ask me. I'll send it to you. Is perennial, and in that one it likes moist and rich. So they're kind of opposite one another. The other one's tall. The one thing that was interesting that I looked up when I was going through all this was that chamomile has the same nutrients as valerian, which of course is nature's Valium, which is why it helps you sleep, which is why all the sleepy time relaxed teas, it has that same element. Might as well go out of sign here. One of the things that I came across that, this one is your They both have similar foliage. Yeah, full sun height space. Okay, so this is the tall one. But see what a lovely thing it is to look at? And then once you get them growing, I noticed that my low one was coming back, and then I can pinch it and it'll keep moving. You also find out that if you're doing well with a plant that requires something, then you know that you can put other things in there that have the same requirements. You know, I mean, we work on our thumbs for a couple of years until we get them sometimes. There are books out there. This one actually came from Turlock back when they had the borders, which I just missed terribly. And they talk about the kind of thing I'm telling you, where it says that you can grow them, and it tells you how to process them, the whole idea. You know, they build in recipes, like they tell you the different things you can do, eyebright, fenugreek, what they're worth. Parsley, which we have behind us here, you know, one of the most widely grown herbs, used in tinctures, easy to grow. People used to put it on restaurant plates. Do they still do that? As I grew up in a restaurant. My folks had restaurants in the Bay Area, and so I never realized what an interesting education that was until I got grown. You know, but we always would put that on. It actually has chlorophyll in it, which is really good. So my mom always said, she was hotel trained, that it was a good way to clean your breath at the end of a meal or something, so that you could do that. You know, everybody was worried in those days about all that kind of thing. All right, the other one, chives, of course, you know, is very culinary and it's perennial. A lot of people do what are those garlic society chives. That's a real pretty plant, and you can whack it down every year. Catnip, of course, is really good for digestive, sleep, vinegars. When we were in the program, they taught us to make tinctures. Anybody not know what a tincture is? Okay, a tincture is where you have to pull the elements. Thank you for asking. I appreciate that. So many people don't. They pull the elements out of the plant, and you have to preserve them. So we can preserve them in oil, in vinegars, in alcohol. Everclear makes a wonderful one. Now, don't drink it, but good for preserving. Yeah, I know. Every 3 or 4 years, I show up at Bevmo and I go in and I get a case of, you know, Everclear, and they're going, and they look at me and they say, "You look really pretty good for drinking that." You know, and it's like, no. I use it to make plant medicine, people. Too funny. And of course, cilantro is an annual, and it's something that, you know, we all love. By the way, you can take the leaves and freeze them into ice cubes and utilize them that way fresh. So when they dehydrate, you can still mince and do everything you want to your dishes. There was a gal who, we called her, we all had to come up with names that matched your name. So being Kay, I became Kale Kay. And this was her friend, and she was Cilantro Cheryl. And she taught me a spaghetti recipe where you do the spaghetti, and while it's hot, you put in chopped up sun-dried tomatoes, and that picks up the oil. And then you dress it with chopped up cilantro, lots and lots and lots of it, which is actually very beneficial. It has a whole lot of nutrients in it, and feta cheese, and you mix it all up. Really good. So, see, little recipe for the day there. Dill, which we have the parsleys, and this is another one that you have an example of how you can present if you want to have just a small space. See how you can easily put all the things you need in here. Here's your rosemary, which is in that lemonade back there. And by the way, rosemary, I taught 7th and 8th grade for a while, and we would have a Renaissance day, and I was Miss Kay, the herb lady, and I would have kids come up and tell me they wanted some of my marijuana, and so then we'd have to go around and discuss, you know, that this was, back in that day, you know, we didn't have refrigeration, and so it was really important to try and deal with all the things that not having refrigeration handles. And one of them was they utilized a lot of herbs in those days to help mask things and help get things going. And the rosemary is very beneficial if you're going to eat meat. It's a good idea to do rosemary. One of my husband's favorite tricks was I grew the long staffed one. You know, there's two. There's the float one, and then there's the long one. Well, the long one is really good because you can peel the leaves off. He was a meat eater, and you can put that one into your chicken and everything, or roast it on top of it, and you get all that flavor and you get all of that health benefit to go along with it. So those of us who follow my philosophy, yes?
Take the leaves off first and then put this...
If you're going to put it in through something, you remove the leaves. Otherwise, what I like to do is just take the roasting pan, you know, the La Croissant thingies or whatever they are, and put it on the bottom and then put the marinated things on top. You can do it with potatoes also, and oh, you know, roasting infuses flavor. Atta girl, see? Lots and lots of uses. Everybody should have a rosemary plant.
Oh, I do.
And you know what? You want it because it helps you remember. In the herbology lore, rosemary is for remembering. It helps eliminate the forgetfulness. So all of us old people, we need to be taking our rosemary, sleep on a rosemary pillow, you know. And parsley, my parsley reseeds itself, it likes it. Your mints will do all that for you. And those are such a good thing to add to your teas. You know, the mints are really wonderful, mint and lemonade. And of course, sage. Sage is another one that is, it talks about it's for wisdom, which it is. It, again, imparts certain nutrients that we need. The theory being that if you just do a little bit of something that, you know, like I say, you know, then you're back where you are supposed to be, in the middle of the whole deal. Dill, I've grown dill lots of times. Dill is vinegar and pickles. It's actually a little beneficial. It's not that hard to grow. Fennel is perennial. You have to find yourself a place. I'm in the process right now of taking out a foo-foo box, one of the last I have, and replacing it with asparagus spears, because that way I can go out every day and get a few of them each time. And that's something that, you know, I need for my body. Lavender, we were talking earlier, Brad and I, about the whole lavender thing, that I was trained in how to make wands from lavender and all the things you can do from it, make pillows and such. So if you get a chance and you want lavender, you need to know there's different varieties, they have different purposes, look it up, and some are very, very low and some are very, very tall. So, you know, make sure that you investigate which. One of the prettiest things I ever saw was somebody had put the low, the next low, and the high all together, you know, and sort of in a little area, which was very dramatic, very nice, and very useful. And just to make sure I don't forget, because these guys need it, herbs want haircuts twice a year. They like to be cut after they've bloomed. They want you to know that you appreciate them, and then when you cut them, they'll come back again with new vigor. You know, so that you just have to accept that responsibility if you're going to be a plant owner. The lemongrass, they sell it here. It's nice, it's a tender. You get a little pot of it. You can go out and get small pieces of it to put in tea, and if you're doing any Asian cooking. The lemon verbena, I have a plant. It grows quite large if you shelter it, and when I dry the leaves and then I put them in a tea mix. It's a lovely aromatic, and you can use it culinary. Sweet marjoram, there's the marjoram plants that you need to have right here. It's a nice little put into a rock garden, have a few little rocks around, and you can do some of those. Your sage would go very nicely because they all like the same type of soil. And it's delicious to take a very simple thing and to chop up some little fine herbs in there and toss it in. I mean, you just infuse it with all of this wonderful flavor. It's Alice Waters decided that California was the place to truly have cuisine. I got lucky in my life when he was in school and got to go visit her. You know, just a simple ingredient, some clean olive oil, vinegars, and this makes a difference. And you can help your health that way. Mints, you have your mints here. There's all different kinds. They've got designer mints, chocolate mints, you name it. And oregano is very similar to marjoram, but it is not. And they have a distinct differentness to it. Plus oregano oil is a medicinal that you pay a lot for the little bottles to put inside you because it's an antiviral. So there are plants that help other plants and can help you. You can make a little tea out of it and drink it, you know, sieve it out and everything with honey. It's very good for you. Parsley, as I said earlier, it's a biennial, it's culinary, it likes well moist, and parsley has a beneficial thing happening with you. If you're starting to notice that you need more greens, make a pesto out of parsley if you want. You know, pesto is not just one plant, it's a process. So you can make a pesto out of any type of green thing. Then the rosemary that we talked about has all of those. It's minimal care once you get it established. You have to get the plants that grow like that, you have to get them into the root. My favorite thing is, and they sell it here, you've got your B1 vitamins that you can dip things in and get them going, and make sure that when you pull them out of the can, you know, you wiggle those roots out, you know, teak them a little bit, you know, give them a little bit of a mound to sit on, and baby them until you see them picking up, and then you can let them go. But you know, it's initially like a little kid. Little kid needs something, and then they can stand on their own. The sage plant, as I mentioned earlier, is quite nice. We'd use it for more than just, you know, Thanksgiving dressing and all that. It's not a bad culinary herb to look at. It looks really good with roasted vegetables because it's a plant that is fresh in the winter time. So you can go into that one. Stevia, I've had luck in growing it, and then I've had bad luck in growing it. So I haven't tried recently, but if you can get it successful, to me stevia was a little bit like orchids. If I found a spot it liked, it was happy with it, and I could make it there. You agree, Brad?
I have one that I've had in the ground for 6 years now.
Okay.
And I cut it back in the fall, and it comes back every spring from the roots.
See? He knows the guy. That's where you talk to, you get your stevia plant. You talk to Mr. Brad. Tarragon, French tarragon was one I also had some difficulty with, and I grew it successfully, and then finally it didn't make it. But in the meantime, the farmer's market actually has it, some lady down there, it makes dynamite vinegar. When you get it, go get yourself some organic vinegar and put it in, and sprinkled on eggs. Oh, I mean, it just sparks it right up, so you don't need salt. You know, I mean, the beauty, every plant has something, and when you work with it and you get the taste, and then you can learn from it, because the level is introductory, beginning to know, and experimenting and coming up with your own unique, what you like kind of thing. Thyme, of course, is fantastic. You know, it's, what was it, Scarborough Fair, rosemary, sage, and thyme. It's a plant that also has medicinal qualities. I suggest that you look into them if you're interested and you plant it. And again, the ones that like that type of rock kind of thing, Mediterranean, they'll make a nice little setting where you can pull things together. And violets I put in because it's a nice little flower that is also useful for culinary, and they work it. Now on your other side, I tried to give you just a bit of what you need to pay attention to, as I said. Soil, and I tried to give you a thing how you can group it, you know, how moist is it. My little story is I moved to town from Livingston. Sand. How many people are familiar with sand? Oh, you know what I'm talking about. Little shovel, pull it over, tiny bit of water, it's fine. I moved to the clay. And so as I'm trying to add things to my yard, the last was fruit trees. And I had a section that was the lowest spot, and I kept overwatering these little boogers. And I'm like, oh. And I have a guy who comes and helps me, who's handy with a shovel. So finally, we got together and we decided that we would put like an irrigation pipe. Actually, we just cut the bottom out of a plastic thing, stuck it down in 3 corners, far enough into the ground that I can go look at it and see if it's still got water in it. I don't need to water. So sometimes, that's what I say about the water sense. You're going to have to work on establishing a way to deal with it on your particular area. Don't hesitate to ask for help, but just know that it's not the kind of thing that people can say this, this, and this, you know.
If you have one of those low spots where you've got heavy dense clay, you can also just put in an easy raised bed right there.
I like that solution. That one is, at my time in life, there's some things I don't wiggle with. I like that. That's exactly right. See, you know, as we group together as people who like to grow things, then we can help each other figure out how to deal with the changing situations. Yes?
Sand and clay are one thing. Try smelling rock.
Oh, I lived there for a while too. No, you're so right. We brought dirt in after dirt in after dirt in, and finally, like he said, you built a box and you put the dirt in the box because otherwise it filtered through. Yes.
Yes.
Oh no, Snellingites, they have by admiration for anything they manage to grow out there.
Oh, try Don Pedro.
Oh, Don Pedro, similar type thing. Yeah, no. But what he's saying makes sense. Yes.
We also have something called Harvest Supreme that amends clay soil and softens it up so that the roots can.
I was going to say, I've been coming here and buying that ever since I discovered, not for my tree area, but for all my other garden areas, because I have a raised bed about this long on railroad ties that work out pretty well. And the same thing we've talked about with the light. You have to sit, I had to figure out where I was going to be able to grow tomatoes. I've grown tomatoes for, how old am I? Oh God, 50 years probably. And tomatoes have a requirement. They require a certain amount of light. And that's something you can't control. The other things I can. So it took a while. I sat out there in a spot and I measured it and then finally found the one that would work. So if you have a plant that is really insistent, you know, then that's what you wind up having to do. But, or there is always, you can grow indoors, you know, with added lights or something. But there's also, like I say, moving the plant and bringing in the umbrellas. You know, there are a certain degree of things you can handle. So that's how to hopefully handle that. The caring for your garden begins as soon as you plant it, you know, like we're saying, that some of these things you have to do, the dipping you have to do. The first time that my garden helper came over and we pulled out something that got fairly root bound, and he took his little knife and started cutting the edges of the plant, I was like freaking, but he was absolutely right. We needed to stimulate and get new root growth and all of the things. And these are things that just come with time and, you know, kind of working on it. Now, I'm going to play the Brad card. I got a lot of things in my head. I've covered my sheet, so ask me any questions you want. Oh, and this is the next level too. After you go from this level to wanting to make your own drugs and everything, you know, this one, right? Which is just talking about stuff. Then if you go deeper and deeper, like I say, you know, the pyramid, then I found this one. And as you can see, it's tabbed. I'm still reading it because she has all the credentials behind her that show that she knows, she can talk about. So when people say to me, well, I don't think drinking green tea will make any difference, Kay, then I can turn around and I can give them a photocopy of a thing that says, well, actually, it has these, you know. So if you're at a point like I am, where I try to make sure that if I have to take a pharmaceutical, I will take the pharmaceutical. But I prefer anything that I need long-term. You know, not acute, but chronic, long-term, to be something that I can get from the plants, because in my belief system, plants are the medicine. You know, we little mammals don't make our own food. That's the big difference between us little mammals and the plant world. The plant world, I'm teaching this to a group of kids, they make their own food. So, you know, the closer we get to doing that, and that's why I believe in my herbs. Yes?
You mentioned asparagus. Can that go into a pot also, or a raised bed?
A raised bed is what I'm going to do.
Okay.
Yeah, you're going to have to remember though that in the mirror world of nature, that as above is below, meaning that if this is what the tree looks like up here, this is what the tree looks like down here, which is why you stop watering. A friend of mine said, I keep giving the tree water and it's not doing any good. And I said, well, where are you putting the water? And she said, well, right at the base of it. And I said, it's a huge tree. You have to give it out at the drip line. You know, you have to follow the roots out, and you can also train plants to do that. You can work with, I've experimented growing in cloth bags and various types of containers over the years. And, you know, you find out which works best for which medium. The superior soils that they sell here, I'll tell you right up front, the trees that I have now that struggled in the beginning are doing so well because I came in, we dug the hole really big, we refilled it with all that soil, and it was done, and now it's to a point where I can manage it and I get absolutely fabulous fruit out of my backyard. I'm funny. I don't give work to something that doesn't at least, you know, kind of work on giving back. Yes, that was a good question. Thank you.
Can you speak about just aromatics in general, in terms of just if you like, you want to just make your room a little bit more pleasant, bring the lavender in, bring some rosemary in just for the odor in the air. You know, if you're not feeling great, maybe a sprig of rosemary just underneath your nose.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Actually, every night when I go to sleep, I do the lavender drops on the pulses and do this. It's one of the things I did as a takeaway. And you can do aerosols where you can take your plant and you can put it, I'm struggling to come up with the name, it's got a funny name, and you drop that on the water and you set it in the sunshine, and the sunshine causes the plant's aromatics to drop into the water, and then you can pull that water back in and you can mist your room and everything with it. Oh, pillow is what, we made hops pillows to help us sleep. So, you know, that's another one that's really cool. Hops, I take hops in my tea every night. That's why beer makes people sleepy. It's the hops, it's part of that whole, it also, you know, has other characteristics, but that's the fermentation. No, the plant thing, what I like about that is, I didn't remember to mention scented geraniums. Scented geraniums are a wonderful byproduct. They have the real small leaf, and they're actually fairly edible too, but their nice thing is they're characteristic. They can give you a lovely aroma through if you just touch their leaf.
The other good thing about some of the highly aromatic plants like a scented geranium or rosemary is they also tend to be mosquito repellents as well.
Absolutely right. Yes. Yeah, they call that one scented mosquito a mosquito plant, and I have one of those too. And they're pretty easy to grow. They're not like the big old geraniums that just get floppy and go like crazy. They're the ones that stay nice and compact, and you can put them in a windowsill or something, and they work really well. The lemon verbena that I mentioned earlier is another lovely plant that happens. And I noticed that you had those lemon thyme tree ones over there. And that would be a nice one for people who wanted to create. I have a sunroom on the back of my house. I enclosed a patio. And so I have little areas for the plants that like that kind of thing because the house is dark. So you can do, as he was suggesting, you can make something. And what's nice is to go out and make yourself just a routine. I'm at the stage now where it matters. I'm reading up on this longevity thing and what are the characteristics that you need to acquire to make that happen. And part of it is the sensory thing, if you kind of interact with your plants in that way. Good questions, and thank you, Brad.
I've heard eye bright actually helps your eyes. How does that?
We can look it up. Well, the horse chestnut is one of the ones I had marked and flaxseed, because I'm on both of those right now. My eyes are dry. And, okay, it doesn't have it in this book, but
Yeah,
there
no,
will...
I didn't find it either. I found it online, but not so much
Well,
in the books.
Get in touch with me, we'll figure it out.
Okay.
Not everything is in every place. That's the thing you need to understand. I've been studying this pretty intently for close to 40 years. And obviously I've got some things worked out, but there's always something to learn from it.
How do you use your flaxseed? What do you?
Oh, my flaxseed is simple. I pull the bottle out of the freezer, I put the teaspoon in the coffee grinder, I grind it. Right now we got oranges like crazy. I squeeze the oranges, I mix it. It's sort of an interesting orange flavored stuff that's just delicious. And the flaxseed has, I just have an article that I'm still reading, has something out of the coating, which is the fiber, the inner part that has another part, and then the oil itself is one of the few plants that produces the omega-3s and 6 that we ordinarily get from fish. I'm a pesca vegetarian because, you know, some things the plants don't produce. And another one is like iron. We get iron from red meat, everybody says. Well, that's true. But you can cook a bunch of vegetables in an iron wok and get the same effect, but without the red meat issue if you don't want that. You know, so there's ways to look. You've been wonderful. You've been informative. You've been interesting. And Brad, thank you so much for your help. If you guys are interested in a medicinal one, we can put it together another time.